With BotCon going on, I figured you guys have enough Transformers stuff to look at this weekend, so we're going to do something a little different. And a little different around here means it's time to go back to Webdiver. This is Phoenixon, which I'm using the actual pronunciation in the anime to give that name out, while it might be spelled a little bit differently elsewhere. He's a bullet train, which is very obvious, which is a rather cultural thing. Trains are not such a big deal here in America anymore, especially of the bullet variety, but in Japan, it's a part of everyday life, and these toys are pretty common. And as you can see, this one, not too badly sized. This is about the size of one of the RID bullet trains, maybe a little bit beefier. And it's far from the only transforming bullet train there is. Takara's making more of them these days, actually. But as you can see, it does share a lot of the techno designs that the series is known for. The central cockpit area, for instance, very interesting design between headlights here in the front and a very interesting dome with a bit of white design breaking it up. And then there is that green, that kind of matrix cyberspace green that goes all the way down, trimming out the top edge of the bullet train itself. As you can see, yes, it's all cast in white plastic all the way through, and we'll see some more colors in plastic once we get to the actual bot mode. But for now, let's take a look at the actual design elements. Again, one of the highlights of this series for me is just how many intricate details are going through a lot of the inner moldings of the toy. A lot of little things that you wouldn't typically see on a Transformer, and done in a way where there's so much solid area giving way to so much tech detail. It's an interesting aesthetic that I have always enjoyed. And one thing about this one, unlike a lot of the Webdivers I've reviewed so far, the color is not so extreme. You know, the blue, it's a nice metallic shade against the white, is pretty much the main colors here in the vehicle mode. You really only have that neon green and the orange giving you any kind of stranger appearance like a few of the others in this toy line have had. So this one's a little bit of a departure, maybe a little bit normal looking. Trust me, that is not going to last. For now, we can mention a couple other little things. He does roll quite well thanks to having some rather large wheels on the underside. And if you happen to have two of them, there's a coupling in the back that allows you to connect them back to back, which lets you have a much longer train that goes backwards and forwards. So if you want to have that too, you can also have that. One thing I do like is there is a nice bit of parts hiding. Of course, underneath, it's just a whole bunch of stuff crammed together, and the rear as well. But here on the side, you can see an obvious hinge there that's going to go into the robot mode transformation. There's a less obvious one up here, but this one I really like the element of some molding and the paint color matching up so it actually has a place in the design. That's actually a pretty cool and clever way of using it, so bravo to the designers of this toy. So yeah, besides that, it's a bullet train with no inherent features on its own, so let's get them into other modes. So I'm going to start by splitting up everything here in the rear. It's all pegged in several spots. This is all crammed in, by the way. This was actually a little bit tricky getting back into vehicle mode. So beware, a lot of this soft plastic stuff that we'll get into later really has to get crammed in there. In some spots that are supposed to be on pegs, I couldn't reach the pegs, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't really affect the transformation that much. I'm going to raise all this over this way and split this up. And now, before we continue, I'm also going to rotate him around like so, and rotate the cannon up into position. Fold the coupling down, and fold that down like so. And you're going to get something of an artillery mode. Now, the big gimmick to this, if you haven't seen my other Webdiver reviews, the big figure, Gradion, has a video game built in. All of these other characters have transformations that you can unlock and attach onto Gradion. When they're attached on the Gradion, you hit a button, sends a little infrared signal, as you can see lighting up there, telling the game which is attached, and then it appears in the game as a power-up. It's a neat little gimmick, but it was super expensive at the time, so it didn't really take off. But there you get an armor mode. And It's actually not too bad, especially if you want to fold out the wings and make it a little bit more ornate. I'm also going to rotate out these translucent pieces, which will have another function later on. Go ahead and get the legs folded down to where they're supposed to go. From there, I'm going to rotate out the feathers on the tail as well as this. It's a little sword that actually does remove, and it does look like it could be used by someone else in the line, though I will admit I'm not entirely sure who, because I don't see any spot it would fit on this particular toy. Cannon folds up like that. I can rotate it around to make it less obvious, of course. Hatch folds down, and here's the part where I really wish I had not clipped my fingernails beforehand. Ah, there we go. Flip that around, rotate the head out, clip the belly back together. And that will give us Phoenixon in his, well, typically you'd say robot mode, but of course this is no robot. Now, a lot of the Webdiver figures I've reviewed to this point have had more or less humanoid robot modes, so certainly animalistic, but nothing that just transformed into a straight-up animal, which the line did have quite a few. I've been kind of easing you in with the more robotic aesthetic, and now we're just going full headfirst into pure animal. But if we look at the head, we can tell a lot of Webdiver's typical traits still exist in this figure. Since he does have a lot of that techno detail surrounding his head with all that green, a lot of detail around his eyes to make them stand out, and very kind of cartoonish anime eyes going on. So he does have that Webdiver aesthetic, even though he definitely does not look like the ones I've reviewed previously. And one of the big things I like, and I've said this in videos in the past, is visual change, where the toy is using parts of the vehicle to create parts of the robot, or Phoenix in this case, because it's the entirety of the body as well as the wings. But at the same time, there is so much new detail going on here. The white has almost completely disappeared and given away to a lot of reddish orange paint and some red-orange plastic in order to really push the Phoenix envelope here. You can still see all of that bright green with the inner tech detail going all throughout the wing. There's a little bit of a translucent effect to give him a little bit of flame, and also to kind of bridge the gap a little bit so it doesn't look like it's just two angular pieces of plastic nailed together. To the rear, we can see that we can see the bullet train body has actually created a decent body for a bird, leading all the way to the rear section. And then, of course, we have the tail itself, which is more classic Phoenixon design with these long braided feathers going all the way out. It's a very, very interesting look. You can also see, yeah, of course, there's plenty of yellow and blue now exposed too. He got extremely colorful on us. And it does give him somewhat of a busy look, but being the type of Phoenix he is, I think that works for him. And I should finish transforming these things before I go into detail. That'll get someone talking in the comments. So yeah, this is pretty much what you're going to get out of this toy. The thing about this particular Webdiver is he doesn't really offer a whole lot on his own. This one's more about the visual extreme and differences between vehicle and beast mode. So he does not quite have the same playability. For articulation, the neck does rotate and it does hinge up and down here at the body and at the base of the head. He can open his mouth, where you will see a tongue and teeth painted in, so he has that going for him. The legs themselves are hinged here, so he does have some forward and rotation at the knee and at the hip, and then a ball joint at the ankle, which does not really give a whole lot side to side, but you can at least rock it up and down. And that's about it. You really have. The one disappointment I have is in the wings, in that they don't fold any farther back than this. I would have really liked to have had his wings folded back. Needless to say, they can rotate at least, so you have that, and this piece does come in and out if you want to furl the wings or whatever, and the little claw up top rotates back and forth. And of course, Because it's part of the transformation, the feathers can also be adjusted as well. And you can also get the tail to hinge up and down. It's not a whole lot of articulation, and you would argue just how useful it actually is because there's really nothing dynamic that can be done with it. Like I said, this is a toy that's more about the visual change from one mode to the other. And to be fair, it does have one of the better armor modes for Gradion, so it also has that going for it. For a little bit of inbuilt gimmick, we can detach these translucent parts, and that will connect into this piece here to create his launcher, which I do like. Kind of it's ironic that he kind of has this upward angle like an anti-aerial cannon thing, but he is an aerial creature himself, so I'm not entirely sure what that amounts to. But hey, it's something you can do. And now he's going to look uneven for the rest of the review. Oh, I didn't think that through, did I? No, here. There. He looks even again. He looks plucked, but he looks even. The last thing I can show off is he does have a little button on the side, which is blocked by the wing, so I can't really show. There we go. So that little button is going to be what activates his IR signal, which goes off right there. And it does have its own unique sigil in there for Phoenixon and the Webdiver, but it's a little bit hard to see. It's supposed to be a bird of some sort. It's a little bit tough because it's translucent orange on top of orange plastic. It's a little bit rough, but hey, it is what it is. And what it is at the very least an interesting figure. That is Webdiver Phoenixon. It's a very different type of toy, and while yes, the lack of robot mode does lead to some playability issues, it's an incredibly good toy at, as I keep saying, visual change. It's a very extreme difference, and I think it plays it quite well. This was probably a really inspired choice to create a bird out of the shape of a bullet train. It did work out for it really well. Overall, kind of limited as a toy. If you're just looking to get into Webdiver and you're curious about which one to start with, this is probably not one of the ones to go for. It's a little bit lacking compared to some of the others. It's also not the weirdest toy in the line. We will get there at some point. But for now, I think it's introduction enough to where this line really goes.